Welcome to a brand new set of 10 devotions we are going to be doing called Negative Beliefs, or I like to call them broken beliefs, things that we have a tendency to believe that frankly the Bible doesn't say is true and you shouldn't believe in. So each of these are different and we're going to look at them each individually. And so today the first one I want to look at right out of the gate, some of these are a little controversial, like this one, marriage makes you happier. Now, I have no problem with a discussion of the fact that you being married makes you happy. I think that's great, okay? But what I mean by that is a lot of times people that are unhappy believe that the only way that they ever would be happy is if they were married. And frankly, nothing could be further from the truth. Because happiness, according to Scripture, well, first of all, we're taught to seek joy in Scripture, and joy is not based on external circumstances. It's based internally on our connection to God. But when you put this kind of emphasis on marriage, and you believe like once you find the one, that right person, you find that person you're supposed to share the rest of your life with, what happens is you place a heavy emphasis on that marriage that frankly only God could ever fulfill. So marriage was never meant to be your end all, as in like once I find that perfect person, I'm going to be set, I'm going to be perfectly happy. It doesn't work like that. And within the framework of marriage as God designed it, marriage wasn't designed to be that way. Sure, it does produce joy in your life in some ways. It has wonderful experiences that you can show love to that person and they love you, and that's all great. I'm not undermining that. But marriage and its intent in the Scripture has a different kind of a spin. And the kind of spin that we're looking at comes in Ephesians chapter 5. In verse 21, he's talking about this submission one to another in marriage. And the whole entire premise of the last portion here of chapter 5, he talks about wives, respecting and standing by their husbands, husbands loving their wives as Christ loved the church. But you finally see in Ephesians 5:21, it says, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And the weirdness about this is marriage, and we say this at every wedding ceremony that we do, marriage is actually designed by God to represent our relationship with Him. As Jesus being the groom and the church being the bride of Christ, marriage is designed to be an outward sign of the relationship that God offers to His people. So that's not necessarily about being happy, it's about being holy, it's about being connected, it's about showing sacrificial love one to another. So the best marriages that I've ever seen have selflessness at the seat of it. They're serving each other. They're forgiving quickly. Sure, they're making mistakes, but those mistakes, just as our mistakes are met with love and forgiveness quickly instead of keeping a record of wrongs, instead of holding on to things. So when we think of marriage, more often than not, it makes us holier because we are challenged by our spouse to become better versions of ourselves, and our spouse is challenged by us for the same reason. And I always use that analogy that the things that we are adored to, the things that we are, kind of charmed by when we start dating our spouse, they become somewhat repulsive after we're married. And I don't know when that happens, but if you have a girl that you're dating or a guy that you're dating, like, oh man, he's a neat freak. He's always so tidy. His car is perfectly in shape. He's always so well dressed and everything. Well, when you get married, after a couple years, you're like, oh man, this guy's so uptight. Like all he does is, clean his car. He's cleaning everything. Like he's never happy unless the house is clean. Like there's a place for that where something breaks. Well, the realization should be that we never should have put that kind of an emphasis on marriage to begin with. Marriage is God's tool, and yes, we can find some fun and some enjoyment and even some happiness, but marriage is not the source of our happiness. Only God can fulfill the true joy of our hearts.